I was 17 when I got my second car. My first car was an old beat up hatchback. You didn't take that cruising. That's not a cruising car. That was a get to school car, a car you were grateful for and didn't polish. Got in a wreck on Main Street. That was into that car. My second car was a 1979 Mazda RX-7, 11 years old, had mechanical problems, lots of miles, rotary engine, drank oil like an athlete drinks Gatorade. Low to the ground, gold. Not yellow, gold. And man, I polished that thing to a shine. Now, whatever is happening under the hood, that's another person's problem. My car on the outside, shine. Now, I don't remember exactly what was paid for it. I remember that the bill of sale said $2,000. Now, not even a title, y'all. No, a bill of sale, which means I didn't think about it at the time. It was probably salvaged. I was 17. I didn't care. It was polished to a shine. I remember exactly what I thought when I got it. My first thought was, and I kid you not, I can't wait to take this cruising. I think I actually said it out loud. And when I turned on the Main Street in Benson for the first time in that car, my hand cranked windows down going nowhere, and a line of people going nowhere at the same speed, man, I felt like I belonged. And that's what cruising was. And that's what we lost. Welcome to Joko Yo, the podcast about Johnston County, North Carolina. Today we're going to talk about driving in circles, but we're also talking about belonging and ritual and what happens when a town decides that young people being young in public is a problem to be solved sometimes. And I'm going to also talk about my grandmother, but we'll get there. Here we go. Here's how it worked. You turned on the Main Street and ride around Farmer Street, maybe a football field or so from the Main Street stoplight, the one that's a roundabout now that no one seems to know how to navigate. Traffic started to slow. Not because anything was wrong, but because that's where it began. That's where you entered the thing. And the moment you did, you started scanning. You were looking for your people. Whose car is that? Is that somebody I know? And at the same time, you were clocking anybody and everybody that you didn't know. What are they driving? Who is that? Do I know them? Should I? Sometimes you'd see somebody through a car window who looked good, and you'd say so out loud through the window at a stranger in direct contradiction of everything TLC was about to tell you in No Scrubs. You did, in fact, hang out the passenger side of your best friend's ride. We all did. Don't act like you didn't. Wednesday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights, from about 8 o'clock until maybe 7 o'clock, until about 11 or so, 11:30. 2,000 people on a good night in a town of a few thousand. You do that math. Benson on a cruising night wasn't a small town gathering, man. It was an event. If you were from out of town, you probably ended up at McDonald's. If you knew what you were doing, you were in the deli parking lot. You know who you are. It took about 2 hours to go a mile and a half. Nobody cared. That wasn't the point. The point was the going, the seeing, the being seen. The windows down and the music up and the specific freedom of being young in a slow-moving car on a Friday night with nowhere in particular to be. You might meet your friends and ride together for a while. You might meet someone who would eventually become something more than a stranger you yelled out through a car window. A lot of people did. Benson cruising nights produced actual marriages. I'm related to somebody that met her husband on cruising Benson. Lots of people. I'm not making that up. The most analog matchmaking system in Johnston County history, and it worked for a lot. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. Before I was old enough to cruise, before I had the RX-7, before I had that hatchback, before I had any car at all, I used to sneak out at night, pockets full of quarters, and walk to the Robin Hood arcade at the beginning of the route. I was maybe 12, 11, maybe 13, I don't know. Supposed to be in bed in any case. And I'd walk past the cars on my way in, slow-moving cars full of older kids going nowhere on purpose. Windows down, music up. I was walking faster than they were driving, and I was a little jealous of them. Not of anything specific, just the bigness of it. They were out in the world in a way I wasn't yet. They had arrived at something that I hadn't, and I told myself I'd be there one day, and I was. I eventually traded the quarters in the arcade for a gold RX-7 on a Friday night, traded video game innocence for cruising innocence-ish, and eventually traded that for college and adulthood and all the stuff that came after. The Robin Hood's gone now, and in its place there's a gas station and a convenience store and an Indian restaurant that I will tell you serves some genuinely good curry, which is its own kind of Johnston County story, but that's another episode. Everything goes. Some things get replaced by something unexpected. Sometimes that's not the worst thing. Here's where I'm going to tell you about my grandmother. Because when I think about cruising Benson, when I think about it as a ritual, as a thing people did, as the way a town organized its young people on a Friday night, I assumed it started sometime around when I was aware of it. That's how childhood is. The 70s maybe, the 80s, I don't know. When you're young, there is no history before you were born. Except my grandmother told me they cruised Benson in the 1930s. Horse and buggies, Model A's, right there on the same street. Yeah, let that land. Think about what that means. The ritual is already old enough that it survived a complete transformation in how human beings moved through the world. Horse and buggy to Model A Ford. Two entirely different technologies. Two entirely different speeds. Same street, same slow procession, same scanning for faces you knew and faces you didn't. Different horsepower, literally. But the same impulse, see and be seen, find your people, be young in public. That's not a 20th century invention. That's not even an American invention. That's just what young people do when you give them a main street on a Friday night. They show up, they circle, they find each other. My grandmother's generation did it in Benson in the late 1930s in Model A's and horse-drawn carriages. My generation did it in Benson in the early 1990s in Camaros and Civics and at least one gold RX-7 of a questionable provenance. 60 years of the same ritual on the same road, and then somebody put up a sign. It didn't end quietly. By the early 1990s, Benson cruising nights were drawing roughly 2,000 people on a Wednesday. In a town of a few thousand, that's not a gathering, that's a phenomenon. And with 2,000 people comes everything 2,000 people brings. Noise, traffic, late nights, and eventually violence. 2 men were killed on a cruising nights in Benson. One was shot, one was beaten to death. They came to town on cruising nights and they didn't go home. I want to be honest about that because this isn't just a story about bureaucrats ruining something beautiful. 2 people died. The town was not wrong to respond. In 1996, the Benson Board of Commissioners outlawed cruising. They put it right in the town's traffic code. Section 71.50 through 71.54, a definition of cruising, a designated no cruising zone, and the rule, drive past a traffic control point 3 or more times between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. and you're in violation. $50 fine plus court costs. That's about $240 all in. 3 times, that's all you got. 3 times past the same point, the thing your grandmother did in the Model A in 33 became a ticketable offense. And just like that, it stopped. Not slowly, not gradually, it just stopped. The Wednesday nights, the Friday nights, the Saturday nights, the Sunday nights, man, it just stopped. The 2,000 people, the washed cars, the deli parking lot, this yelling through windows at strangers who sometimes became spouses, gone. A gold RX-7, polished to a shine, had nowhere to go, but I was out of college by then. It was over for me anyway. Here's the thing about Main Street in Benson on a cruising night. Man, it was alive. 2,000 people don't show up somewhere because nothing's happening. They show up because something is happening. And when they show up, other things happen around them. The McDonald's does business, big business. You might have a business at the arcade or the deli. The arcade does business. A Friday night in a small town becomes a reason to exist. When the cruising stopped, the Friday nights got quieter and quieter, and the businesses that depended on 2,000 people showing up on a Wednesday night started to feel it. I'm nearly convinced that the Hardee's that was downtown stopped existing because cruising stopped. Happened about the same time. And this is the part where I have to mention something. In 1996, the year Benson banned cruising, Heilig Meyer's Furniture Store, if you know, you know, was still open on Main Street. 4 years later, it was gone too. By the early 2000s, the anchor of downtown Benson, the anchors, the furniture store, the Friday night ritual, the reasons to be there after dark, both had quietly disappeared. I don't think one caused the other, but I think they're part of the same story. The story of what happened to small town main streets when the things that made them matter stopped happening one by one. Not with a bang, with an ordinance, with a bankruptcy filing for Highland Myers, with a sign that said 3 times and you're done. Some of those buildings on Main Street are empty now. Some got new lives. One of them is an Indian restaurant, which I genuinely did not see coming, and I'm also genuinely glad about. But on a Wednesday night in Benson, now you can drive down Main Street as many times as you want. Nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to honk. Nobody's going to probably yell at you through a window. TLC won't care because nobody's going to be there. There are people who have tried to bring it back. Cruise Benson events, nostalgia nights, people who remember what it was and want their kids to see it. Town officials who say the ordinance is still in the books, but changes could be discussed if citizens want to revisit it. Maybe they will. Maybe someday on a Friday night, Farmer Street will slow down again, and Main Street will slow down again, and the windows will come down, and somebody will scan the line of cars looking for a face they know or a face they don't yet, and maybe somebody's grandmother will tell them she did the same thing in a Model A on the same street. But I think about a 13-year-old kid walking to the Robin Hood arcade on a summer night with a pocket full of quarters, walking past the slow-moving cars, a little jealous at the bigness of it all, telling himself, man, I'll be there one day. And you know what? He was. For a little while, he was. And I'm Joey, y'all. That's Joe Coyo today. Thanks for listening.